Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. Today, we are talking about staying consistent. We have this conversation with our Fertility Confidence Method clients all the time, and also people who are thinking about joining us when they voice their concerns of trying something before and not being able to stay consistent with it. Or they're of the mind, and this might be you too, and this is definitely a good personal story part of things too, is they know what to do, right? You know what to do. You maybe already live a fairly generally healthy life, but when things feel like they aren't working, it can be really easy to just abandon ship and start over. And you might really resonate with that as someone who's going through their fertility journey, because I find that a lot of couples, particularly women, end up riding what we call the trial and error carousel, where they've read some books, you've read some blogs, you've, scoped out a bunch of Instagram profiles or TikToks, and you've put together, I need to do this, I need to do that. And you have this long list of not just, nutrition and lifestyle habits that you need to accomplish, right? We've got that needy, clingy energy that these are the things that are going to do it for us. But you also then have the laundry list of supplements that you've also put yourself on too. And when it doesn't work, when cycle day one comes, it's really easy to have that mentality of well, it didn't work, so I need to do something different, right? And then the next cycle, you tweak things, you change things, you take things out, or you add more to your plate. And then when that doesn't work, you do it again. This is the trial and error carousel. And if you are oh, wow, that's exactly what I'm doing right now, you are not alone. This is incredibly common, not just in the fertility space, but in the health space as well. And even myself, like I said, I'm someone who often has the knowledge, but when I'm just oh, I just want this to be fixed, right? And I'm not in that right mentality of actually doctoring myself, and I don't have the support around me, it's really easy to be oh, it's not working and just give it up, or to just add more. And everything I've read about, I'm human too, right? I fall for the Instagram ads too. So this is something that with our clients, we always walk them through and talk them through of this is why you're here, right? This is why you're working with us, is so that when cycle day one comes, when you have a particularly emotional week, how do we process through that instead of hopping back on the trial and error carousel, which is a very natural default mechanism of I have to fix this, right? So if you feel that I have to fix this energy, it's really, really easy to assume what you're doing isn't working, trash it, and start something totally new in a very cyclical nature with your cycle. But the reality is that things like hormones, inflammation, egg quality, the exact processes that you are trying to make positive, impactful change to, these things don't necessarily listen to those signals within 4 weeks. We know from the literature that a lot of times when it comes to supplements for egg quality or supplements for inflammation or lifestyle habits or what have you, we're looking at, time periods of 3 to 6 months often. So it's really tricky when you're I've already done that. I've already tried this. I've already tried that. But in reality, we've actually only been doing those things for a few weeks, and we haven't really given it the time that it needs to actually make impactful change. So today I wanted to just give you some tips that we give to our FCM clients when they're really feeling like being consistent is challenging and that doing these things feels pointless because it hasn't worked yet, when we really do need to commit to the plan, right? So the first thing I really want you to remember, and if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, if you haven't, welcome. Please subscribe and go back and listen to some of the awesome, specifically mindset focused episodes in this for this arena. If this is a part that you're like, I definitely need a lot of help with this. But it's a very, common thing you'll hear me say, where we don't want to just like push down our feelings, hide our emotions. We want to learn how to process through the grief that you are experiencing cycle to cycle. And so my first tip for you is that on cycle day 1, when you get that, oh my God, that didn't work, why am I even doing this vibe, is you're allowed to be in your feelings in that moment. Being frustrated, angry, sad, all of those pieces, like, valid, right? All of that's incredibly valid. There's no like, put on a brave face and fake it till you make it, and you have to be optimistic at all times. Like, that's just not the vibe here. And I'm not saying we all need to be like miserable Nellies, but we do need to process our emotions in a healthy and proper way. And a lot of our default mechanisms are to give up, to binge eat, to binge drink, to do drugs, to shop, to numb with scrolling. Like, I want you to really think after listening to this, like, what actually is my current like numbing technique? And no shame or judgment. We all do it. Since I've really been trying to like identify patterns with myself, especially over the last year, I scroll. I think most people do. And it is something that I have been able to make some like good impactful change to, in terms of setting time limits on my phone for Instagram, and really trying to be mindful, because for me, it's work, right? Like, Instagram for me is not just this like dopamine pleasurable experience, because it's very directly tied to my job and to my company. And I obviously follow a lot of fertility stuff. And so there's also, sadness in there as well. So I always have to kind of catch myself when I'm like, I'm in a low place right now. And for me, like, when I just am zoning out and literally just scrolling and not even really like registering what I'm looking at, but I'm also kind of like continuing to put myself in that negative space and also not escaping from work. So I've really done a good job at trying to figure out like, okay, I'm doing that. How do I break that pattern? That's basically why I started reading again 2 years ago. So now instead of my phone, I'm picking up my book. And that's been really helpful. But whatever that is for you, first we need to kind of identify what it is. The other thing that my brain likes to do is shop. And I've always been like that. So I sometimes do have to catch myself of like, do I actually need this? Or am I quite literally just like ignoring something that's going on by buying things that I don't need? And I think this is also a very common female, not just female, I think men do it too, but Tyler doesn't. So we're very different that way. But it's a very common like numbing technique that we actually don't identify, right? So I want you to just take a minute this week or not this week, because maybe this week is a great week, but a week where you are feeling like you're not processing your emotions, you're not acknowledging your emotions, you're not working through that appropriately, and just see like, what do I do in those moments, and how can I make just slight micro tweaks? You don't have to make these big bold changes. I'm still on Instagram every single day. I'm not over here being like, I noticed I did this, and so now I deleted all social media off my phone. I'm never on it, and I'm like the freest, most clear person ever. No. I'm human, and it's just a part of life. I'm sorry. I also can't get rid of it because it is my job. And so maybe I would if it wasn't a part of my work, but that's just not an option for me, right? So I still have times through the day where I'll catch myself being like, do I really need to be doing this right now? Or like, if my brain needs a break, what else could I do to like give my brain a break? Or I'm like, oh, I'm scrolling. My brain obviously needs a break. I'll do this for 10 minutes, and I'll actually kind of like set a time limit for myself so that I'm not like sucked right in. And that tends to help. But this is the long-winded version of me saying, like, we need to process through those feelings instead of just pushing through and numbing in that time frame. Especially in the fertility journey, it's so challenging because that day that you start to grieve what didn't happen the cycle before is the same day a new cycle starts. And you're like, well, back in the saddle, right? Like, you don't really get that processing time. And so we almost need to figure out how to manage that in a more truncated process. Therapy is a really beautiful addition to your fertility care team that I truly could not recommend enough. And if you're someone who's had therapy before, and like, that was not for me, I highly encourage you to try again with a different practitioner until you find the right fit. My first therapy experience was 5-6 years ago. I got pregnant with Nyla, my second. I had a very full private practice already at that point. When I had got pregnant with Cole, I was just graduating. I wrote my licensing exams when I was pregnant with him, just starting my practice. So I was working slightly, but like I didn't have this big, full, thriving fertility practice. Whereas with Nyla, I was still in the clinic I was working at, and I was probably like 70% fertility at that point, 30% just like general women's health. And the second I got pregnant with Nyla, I just realized how incredibly terrified I was of having a miscarriage, because that year in particular, my clients had experienced a lot of loss. And so I had that lived experience with multiple clients over and over and over again. And a part of what makes me good at what I do is that I do genuinely feel for every single one of my clients. So it was very challenging for me to not have the belief that that was also going to be my story, because I just kept seeing it over and over and over again. And I also had a lot of anxiety and fear around telling my clients that I was pregnant. And so within the first week of finding out, I was like, I am not going to do well here. I think it is time to do therapy. And there was probably times I had done therapy actually a couple of times as a teenager, but that doesn't count. So I went to this person who came highly recommended, that had worked with like women in the fertility and grief and loss space. And I won't bore you with the long rehash of the story, but basically it was like one of the worst experiences ever. I walked out of there literally just being like, oh my God, that's fair. Like that was, I just did not connect with this woman at all. She basically told me to just like suck it up, and get over it, for lack of a better word. It was pretty not awesome. So I left that experience, and I had a couple of weeks of being kind of like, well, that really wasn't for me. And then I remembered, like, Kelsey, what would you tell your client if they had that experience? It was like, I would tell them to keep trying. And so I don't think I actually went back to therapy when I was pregnant with Nyla, but shortly after she was born, I had started following my current therapist. Well, she's actually not my therapist anymore, but someone that works under her is. And I was like, I'm going to go see her, because she is, at that point, it was more around, I wanted support with parenting, and I was growing my business, and now I had 2 kids. And so I wasn't necessarily looking for someone in like the fertility focused space at that point. And I connected so well with Jess, and just, I knew immediately, like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be like. Like, you're supposed to want to open up and talk to your therapist, and you should never leave your appointment being like, what the F was that? And so I spent a lot of time with her until Jess had her second baby, and then started working with who was covering for her, and still see her. So, and it's been, well, I mean, I started working with Jess, Nyla just turned 5. So it's been 5 years, but I've probably been working with my current therapist for the last 3. And she's amazing. Referred tons of people to her. I love, love, love her dearly. And so it took time though. And that's what I want to really like hone in for you guys, is that if you've had an experience where like, that was not for me, I did not like that, keep trying, because it's the same with naturopathic doctors. We're not all created equal. Some people might not jive with me, and that's fine, right? And we have lots of clients that have worked with NDs before that come to work with us and have similar stories. And everyone's different, right? The way that they practice is different, and that's fine. Like, we're all going to find the people that really jive with us appropriately. And so if that just wasn't your person, I really encourage you to keep trying. And there are lots of amazing fertility focused practitioners out there that can support you with that. When you're TTC, one of the big factors most women want to know is how to improve egg quality, right? It's the big question. One way we can support fertility outcomes is by improving egg cell health and mitochondrial health. And beyond nutrient, beyond lifestyle factors, adding some extra antioxidant support to your supplement routine can just be that little extra bonus for you on your fertility journey. Needed's egg quality support product combines research-based ingredients in a way that allows them to work synergistically together at therapeutic dose, which is so important. And it's recommended to combine their egg quality support product with the CoQ10 to ensure that you are still getting everything at the correct dosage, which I love. You can find both products over on their site at thisisneeded.com, and remember to use the code Dr. Kelsey to get 20% off your first order. So we're going to process through our feelings, okay? You're also going to find yourself an accountability buddy. And I think this is really important. And your partner might be your accountability buddy, but they also might not be, and that's okay. Tyler and I are doing a fitness thing right now. I don't even know what to call it. We're doing a program with our personal trainer, and I really wanted to do it. I was like, I still have a bit of abdominal separation. I've been working out consistently. I really just need some more focused attention there. I need a more detailed program. We've been eating out way too much. We've gotten a little bit lazy with our nutrition. I think we just need to hone it in. I was all in. I was like, let's do it. But I said to him, I can't do this unless you do it too. Because if you guys have been listening, I do not cook in the household. Tyler does. So I was like, you're the one that's cooking all the meals. You're the one that's planning all the food. I can't then go off and do my own thing, and then you do your own thing. And then we have 2 picky eating kids that we then do their own thing. So I'm like, well, we can't do that for every meal of every day. That would be silly. We have to do this together. And doing it together has quite literally been a game changer for us in terms of being consistent. And so when women come into FCM, they're like, oh, my husband's a little skeptical. I'm like, that's okay. You do you, okay? But if we can get them on board, and they are going to eat what you eat and want to go for walks with you and help encourage you, and you're going to help encourage them, it does make life significantly easier. But I also don't want that to hold you back from making changes if your partner's just not there yet. Okay. We always tell our clients, you just do you and lead by example. And when you feel great, they circle around. I promise you, we see it every single time. Maybe your accountability buddy is a close friend. Maybe it's someone that knows what you're going through, and you can be like, these are the things that I'm doing. Do you want to do it with me? And that they don't need to be going through a fertility journey to benefit from some of the healthy changes, right? Maybe it's someone you actually don't know, but they're in the fertility community and you guys connect on a social platform, or we see this all the time in Fertility Confidence Method. It's really beautiful for me because FCM is a global program, right? So not everyone is around me in my local area. When I worked in a clinic, I could bump into my patients at the grocery store. That doesn't happen anymore, which is kind of nice, honestly. But it also means that when women come into FCM and they're like, oh, hey, I live here. And then 5 people are like, I live there too. Or they all go to the same fertility clinic. There's these pockets of women all over the US in particular from Fertility Confidence Method that are friends and are meeting up and are texting and are talking and are hanging out. And they would have never met if they hadn't come in and worked with us, which I think is honestly something that just really lights me up of okay, the community was such a big piece for me when I built out the program. It was we need to have this strong community vibe, because so often I would have women crossing paths in my hallway in the clinic. And I'm like, oh, if you guys could just like both come into the room and like share your stories you're literally going through the exact same thing. And you literally both feel alone and you're the same, like you get along so well. So this was a really good opportunity for me to be like, here's a bunch of women. Some of you might live in the same area. Like if you need a friend, if you need an accountability buddy, like they're doing the exact same things-ish that you are. So maybe you can find yourself an accountability buddy through the infertility community, which is awesome. The other thing that I think to remember is that if you're like, oh, that'd be nice, but like no one knows I'm going through this fertility journey, you don't have to package it up that way when you're pitching it to your girlfriend. If you have a friend that you're close with, but this is just not something you're open to sharing, that's fine. And there's no shame in that. Let's just tell them you're on a health journey. You want to get healthier. You want to do like, you have another sort of goal in mind. And we package it up in that way and say, hey, do you want to do this with me? And then we can like be accountability partners and just keep each other motivated and those types of things. And it doesn't need to be fertility focused if you aren't there yet in terms of opening that up. So I thought that was a good idea when I was putting, this information together, is I was like, accountability buddies are great, but like also they don't need to know. Like if you don't want them to know, they don't need to know. We're just eating healthier. You're just trying to like instill these habits and be consistent. That's all they need to know, really. And you get to decide when you're ready to open up that part of your life to others. And then the last thing, as always, is truly just to get support. There's so much strength in having an appropriate care team around you. And I think in my lifetime, if I can just see a more blended care of mainstream conventional medicine and everything else, I will die happy. And I do think that when it comes to fertility, especially, but also many women's health concerns in general, as well as a lot of other general health concerns, we do need a very synergistic approach from nutrition, lifestyle, research-backed supplementation, and what can mainstream medicine offer us too. And we just aren't quite there yet, unfortunately. But because of that, there's this mindset that we go through the journey of, I try to get pregnant, I try for 12 months. At 12 months, it doesn't work. I go to my family doctor. My family doctor might run some blood work. They also might just straight up refer us. Maybe they refer to an OB. Maybe they refer to a fertility clinic. The OB doesn't work out, then they maybe refer you to a fertility clinic. And like, that's the sequential pattern of events you have to go through. But that's actually not the reality. That's just the mainstream medicine model. And there is a whole other model of care that beautifully wraps around that process and hopefully sometimes keeps you from needing that last end goal, that RE appointment. But maybe you do, and that's fine. Maybe you need some ART. That's okay. We're very gold standard of care over here. It's not one or the other. It really needs to be both. And so building your care team around you is how you are going to increase your rate of success. And everyone's care team is going to look a little bit different. So what your body needs is going to guide who you need on your care team. But we aren't all good at everything. REs aren't great at the nutrition and supplement piece because that's not what they learn. That's not their education. It's not their zone of genius. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we need to fill that hole with someone that can do that part. Maybe you really want to go the traditional Chinese medicine route. Awesome. There's so many amazing practitioners that can help push you through that process while you're doing other things as well. So you really just need to figure out, like, what does my body need and where are the gaps in my care? And by getting the proper support, it takes this huge mental load off of you because you now know I have all of my bases covered with experts that follow the evidence and the research. And I know I'm on a plan that's right for me. And now when cycle day 1 comes, you're not automatically jumping on that trial and error carousel with all these questions and second guessing yourself, because you can quite literally just say, like, we got this. And you have more realistic expectations of timeline, because that's something that, a good practitioner, of course, should always give you. And you can just let the plan do its job, and you work on the emotional piece of things instead of having to do that or trying to do that and trying to rebuild your plan month after month after month on your own. So finding some good support, the right things for you and for your body, they're going to make this feel less stressful. It's not going to take all the stress away, but it is going to take out this part of the weight where you are overthinking every single decision that you make. That is a huge, huge relief from the mental health piece, and a huge block to you scrapping the plan and starting over, and scrapping the plan and starting over, which is what we're essentially trying to stop. Okay. So we're going to process through, we're going to feel the feels, essentially. We're going to find ourselves an accountability buddy or someone in the community to help keep you accountable. And we're going to get some good support, because that's going to also help you just take the mental load off, and so that you can trust your plan that much more and feel more confident with what you're doing. So hopefully that helps. If you enjoyed this episode, or if you have a friend or family member that you know needs to hear this message, please send that over to them. I'd greatly appreciate it. Give us a subscribe, a rate, a review. It helps the podcast get sent out to other couples who are looking for this information. And as always, make sure you come follow me over on Instagram at Fertility Confidence Method. And I will see you guys in the next episode.